Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you're listening, wherever you're listening. It's the Battle Line Salute to Troy podcast, and the tripod is back, but it's only two bearded bandits. Jamal is clean shaven, so let's see how much he has by the end of the show and see if he becomes a bearded bandit again. I'll kick you first, Jamal Madman. Maggie, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Coach. Great to see you guys as always. You know, I am I'm starting to get more vigilant with the shaving because I'm starting to see more white hairs. So, that depresses me. I've got to count the number of white hairs. I'm a little concerned, so that's why I'm going to keep it clean.
Just embrace it, bro. Just embrace it.
I know.
That's wisdom. White hair is wisdom.
I know. Yeah. People keep asking me, am I stressed? When I tell them I'm getting more white hair, and I'm like, no, but don't ask me because that'll make me stressed, So it's like everything is fine. I just, I would just like to avoid white hair as much as possible. But what can you do?
Or you could go the alternate route and get the Just for Man.
No, not yet, man. We're not there yet. It's just a little bit on like the chin, and I got like one or two on the side. I think I'm still at like 20 white hairs. I'm trying to fend it off as best as I can. I'm starting to have a lot of vitamins at night, to try and fend it off. So let's see.
There you go.
I hope the vitamins are better than an Alex Grinch defense. So remains to be seen. We'll check back in the fall.
And we got the man himself, Ryan Dyrud. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm good, but yeah, you can. Alex Grinch defense can do one thing, but once that kid comes, it's all out the window. So that's why I have a nice full-on white patch here now. That's
nice.
I just have embraced. The white hairs are in full cycle, unfortunately. But yeah, all good. What's up with you, Coach?
I'm doing good. I have actually a white hair in the most random spot. It's like legit right here. It used to be red. It was like my one and only red hair that I had, and it turned white. So now when people, like, especially when I FaceTime my mom, she'd be like, is that a booger? Like, no, it's just like, stop. Leave me alone about my white hair. So just join the club, man. Don't fight it. Just join the club.
I know. I got to just embrace it. So,
Coach, you're not in the club if you have one white hair.
I know. Is that it?
Jamal's
white hair?
No, I have more than one. More than one, but the one that stands out is the one that's like right here.
Okay.
Yeah, I have way more than one. Yep, definitely. And I lost all my hair coaching, so that should count too, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. Big Portal news today. It was crazy at work, and I happened to look at my phone and saw our man Ryan Dyrud tweet this out. So I'm kicking over to him. What happened in the portal today, Ryan?
Yeah, well, SC got some depth that they needed. We'll see what it looks like. Gavin Meyer, out of Wyoming. He's like 6'4", 282, so not as big as probably some people wanted for a true nose in terms of weight. When you think of Harmon, who was 320, when you think of CJ West, who was 330, even Rakes bigger than that, obviously. So we'll see how it fits in size. They needed depth. They get depth. I don't know how much he'll crack into the top rotation, but this is where we see Coach Henny go to work as a coach. And, tweeting is tweeting, but he tweets out it's chess, not checkers once it was announced. So obviously he is happy with it, as, obviously any coach is going to be when a guy commits. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what it looks like come fall camp. 3.5, I think, sacks over his career, which was the same as Harmon. The kid I keep mentioning Harmon. He's the kid out of Michigan State that everyone wanted. Take that for what it is different style of play. But when you think of Harmon, probably cost, we don't know the exact figures, but probably was a pretty expensive 1-year rental, and we get this kid Meyer for, I'm sure, a fraction of that. And when you look at production, it was similar just in terms of numbers on paper. Now we'll see how it looks with the style of play they have and with the players next to Bear and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it was needed. We've talked about all the time how much they needed depth on the defensive line, so they get that piece now, and now we'll see how it develops and plays within the system and whatnot. So, but what do you guys think, or what do you think, Madman?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was obviously the depth on the defensive line is really the primary focus and concern going into this. And, on paper, a good kid, 26 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, Wyoming, not the best of competition. So it's a rotational piece. Let's see if they can kind of get him into the strength and training and development program there, maybe put on 10 or 12 pounds before fall comes around and, go from there. So obviously I don't think it's the home run that Trojan fans were hoping for, but hey, it's always nice to get on base. It wasn't a bunt and it wasn't a home run. It was let's call it a solid single, and you can win the batting title with the single. So
there you go. I love that. And hey, Wyoming is becoming like a nice farm system for SC when you look at Solomon Byrd and Emmanuel Pregnon. Yeah, nice little farm system.
So I'm looking at his film, and he might be a decent 3 technique. He's 284. I mean, maybe he puts on 16 pounds and gets 300, but he has a little bit of burst to him. Like, he's not a world beater, but he has a little bit of burst to him. Has nice long arms. He knows how to punch and get off. This is high school film, so his slim is ugly. So that hopefully they got rid of that ugly slim that he has. But he can move a little bit. He can run. So hopefully it works out. Like you guys said, it's another piece to depth. Depth is an issue on the D line. So hopefully this is a guy that comes in and it doesn't do this when they come in. It at least does this. And then when the starters go back in, it does that. So hopefully it's a good piece. Coach Henny has his work cut out for him. So let's see this dog work go to work.
Yeah, there you go.
So
dog work as it is.
There it is. So I think I'm pretty sure other big people talked about this, but I haven't really seen anybody around really talking about this. And I think this is big for us to talk about. And I talk about it all the time, but another domino has fallen and the demise of the NCAA. There is a antitrust lawsuit going on right now. And according to this antitrust lawsuit, a part of it is that from what I've read and what I've heard and what I listened to, I should start there. This isn't going to court. The NCAA is going to have to settle. So let's start there. The NCAA is getting bullied by this lawsuit, something that we never thought we would see. They've always been bigger than you. They play by their own rules. Now they have to play by rules, and this is going to become a settlement. This isn't even going to make it to court. In the agreement, college football and college basketball, and Division I at least, it's going to be a part of revenue sharing, right? So whatever revenues they made, the players get a portion of it. I don't like it because I think it should be the whole department, but that's a different story for a different day. Another big thing in this agreement that I've read and looked into, and I'm kind of happy about, there's a $2.7 billion settlement involved in this where former players get back pay for their name, image, and likeness. This is huge. And I've talked about this before, and people thought I was crazy. But NCAA, for the two big sports, is about to become obsolete. And I think that it's over, and it's on its way out. I'll kick it to you, Ryan. Ryan, what do you think about this? And we're going to talk about what does this mean for UCLA? I'm so sorry. For USC. Yeah, Jamal didn't even catch it.
Why UCLA on your mind, Coach? He's watching that women's golf championship. That's what's happening right now.
What does this mean for USC? And what does it mean for college sports going forward? Ryan, go ahead. Give me your thoughts. Let's jump into this. Let's get in depth because I have some thoughts. Thoughts, so I'm gonna see how this goes.
Yeah, you'll probably. I'm been trying to dive in kind of more because it's been obviously an ongoing thing, and what the NCAA's paid like $15 million lobbying in DC. They've brought on, didn't they bring lawyers from like Big Pharma and like the Biden Harris campaign? So I mean, they're throwing everything at this and spending at this to back them up, which tells you kind of a lot just from that, right? Without even diving into the actual like lawsuit, like the fact that they're like putting all their chips in. They know that the end is coming if they don't win this, or at least the end of what has been the NCAA in the past. So, I mean, it's a huge deal, and it's going to affect college athletics. You know, we've talked all the time about, not just the pay for play or NIL format, but even just, conferences and alignment and super leagues and all this. And so it's going to be a big deal. And, how it affects SC. I mean, it affects everyone. I mean, not just SC, right? It affects everyone, but the power players at will, or the schools that have the ability to maybe do more independently. I mean, we'll see what that looks at versus teams that can. And SC obviously I think can be more on the independent scale, but no, it's wild. And I think when you look at what they're spending in this, tells you kind of all you need to know.
Man, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is just the next major step in the professionalization of college sports, like we've talked about. And I think the revenue share is very interesting for a couple of reasons. One is now athletic departments are going to be able to pay the players directly. So, what does that now mean in terms of the collective structure? Is the collective structure necessary moving forward? Can now donors just kind of go directly to athletic departments? Are there things the athletic departments can do that are complementary to the collectives? Is that part of maybe a larger kind of athletic department strategy? So I think it's going to be interesting to see, was this collective era, if you will, of the last 18 to 24 months something that was just temporary for this to actually take place? Or does it have a home in terms of additional NIL opportunities? I think number two, it just dials up the need for a significant media rights deal, right? Because if you're going to do rev share off of the revenue that you're getting, the single biggest knob is still your media rights deal. So the SEC and the Big Ten are sitting pretty. It's the reason why USC and others went to the Big Ten. But what does this do in terms of implications for, say, an ACC? What does this do in terms of implications, say, for a Big 12? Do they need to go and now renegotiate their $31 million a year for more? And then third, again, how does this sort of play into that model of the student athlete versus kind of just an employee of the university? And as a corollary to this, Coach, we talked about the Jaden Rashada news as well, who the former quarterback of Arizona State, now with Georgia. He's suing Florida, the University of Florida athletic program, and Coach Billy Napier for not coming through on his NIL deal that was reportedly in the vicinity of 13 to 15 million. So it's crazy now that you have these NIL deals that you have to sort of pay. And Coach, we've talked about this. Sometimes you got to pay the bag twice or three times for a retention standpoint. But then if you don't do it, now not only are you opening yourself up to losing a player, but you're also opening yourself up to litigation and losing that player. So I think these are the three big knobs to think through, but we're kind of headed towards this world here, Coach. I think you're absolutely right, where it's no longer going to be the NCAA. College football now becomes very, very synonymous with Major League Baseball as an uncapped professional sport. And so all of the implications that come with it are going to be significant, but it just goes to show that money is becoming more and more important in terms of the equation, and things that we have gotten to know and love, like tradition and pedigree and history and, the engagement with the university, are starting to become less and less. And so is this tenable? Is this sustainable in the long term? I personally don't think so, but that's the way the world is going right now. And it's just going to be fascinating to see it shake out.
So ever since I heard about this Sunday night. I kind of saw like a blurb of it, and then I saw something about it on Monday, and I looked deep into this and did a lot of research. The first person I'm going to blame for this going the way it is Mark Emmert, and it should not be going this way, right? And I'm going to start with this. He should have put a stop to the SEC 20 years ago for doing what they were doing, because I believe that a little bit of California jumping off the pay for play had something to do with this. UCLA and USC lobbying, saying we got to keep kids here. It makes no sense for kids leaving our state if we want to stay competitive. This is how we keep them here. When that happened, Texas and Florida and everybody else jumped off to it and started to do it. And then the NCAA just said, all right, forget it. You have NIL. That was the worst decision you could ever do it. Same thing with the portal. All right, fine. You can just transfer if you want. They should have capped it. There needs to be a cap on it. And the fact that they never capped it and they just let kids run around and abuse the system shows that there was no structure and it was just a panic move, right? The second thing is that, did you know that Ole Miss already does revenue share for all the athletes in their program? So they take all their revenue share, and at the end of the fall semester, they give them a check. And at the end of the school year, they give them a check for all the athletes in their program. So it's possible. And I don't know how Ole Miss isn't winning this NIL game, because they've already started the revenue share thing, and they're ahead of the curve. I believe that it's not fair to other sports that they are not involved in this. Because just like we were talking before we came on, Jamal, that golfer from USC is really good, and she's a very big face, and everybody's talking about her. Why does she not get any shares? She's putting the school name out there. People know who she is, right? There's gymnastics at UCLA. People know all the gymnasts at UCLA, and people know the gymnasts at Georgia. They deserve a cut of this. It's gotten so bad and so out of hand that these people who are supposed to be in charge of $1 billion industry just let this just go by the wayside, let it become the wild, wild west. And now more people are going to get left out. And now it's not over. We could have ended this right here. Like every sport gives revenue share just like that. Now I'm all for the back pay. I can't wait for my check to come. I just want to let you guys know that. I'm for that. But people deserve it. Softball is the 4th highest grossing sport in the NCAA. They deserve revenue share. If your team comes on TV, they deserve revenue share. They let this get out of hand. It's not over now. Now we're going to have other sports that are going to start going into lawsuits because they deserve their cut. Now, here's another thing that's starting to float around. They're talking about making these guys employees of the school. Do not make these people employees of the school. Do not make these kids employees of the school. Let me tell you why. I understand when you play for the school, you represent the school. But now that you're an employee of the school, you're not allowed to be a college student. Do not take the college experience. So I know they're getting paid, and I understand that. But they still deserve to be kids and to become college students. They no longer can go to parties if they're employees of the school. They no longer can do things that they're allowed to do as an 18-year-old college student. That is the worst decision that's going to happen, and that's going to be the next thing we're going to see, and it's going to become a lot of problems because what happens when you're an employee of the school, you can no longer co-ed, and you can know your girlfriend cannot go to your school. It has to be somebody in the town or something like that. There's a lot of ethical standards that these kids cannot maintain because they're kids. You know what I mean? So, like, you're walking down a road that you don't want to be in. So I'm against that too. That's my little take on it. I'll shoot it to Ryan. Ryan, what do you think about what I just said or just the whole thing in general? And then we'll get, after we go around, we'll get into what this means for USC.
Yeah, well, I mean, the NCAA is your classic, like, American fall story, right? Like a company, essentially, a governing body with a ton of power that just thought they were untouchable. Like any good company, Jamal knows this very well, obviously being the bright businessman he is, but like you're always prepping for the future. You're willing to evolve. And the writing's been on the wall forever that college sports were like things need to change. Everyone gripes about how they make all the money, the coaches make all the money. It's been years of this, and they just never put any plan in place, basically just saying, we're in charge, we're untouchable. If something happens, we'll react to it. And obviously they reacted pretty horribly and poorly. And that's where we are now. And that's why their probably imminent downfall is to be coming. So, it's just, your classic, just horrible management, horrible leadership that didn't expect that anything could happen to them, didn't expect that they could be touched or changed. And they're falling because of it. So in terms of, what you said with kind of just where college sports is going, like, this is always this is why I liked the idea of NIL. Now, obviously it's gotten way off rails and how it's happened. And we've talked about this before, like, man, I did not think we'd see this soon the way it is, but the idea of being able to earn based on who you are and what you bring to the table is like the purest form of capitalism that there is. And to me, being someone that was in college, that paid my way, that didn't get any money, like, to me, that is the fairest way that you were able to reap benefits from name, image and likeness, from branding deals, from sponsorship, from this. To me, that's the fairest. It's there's always murky waters there, and I get the rev share model. I did all that, but I went to Long Beach State, right? Like, our sports didn't earn any money, so it's a different ballgame when comparing USC to someone like Long Beach State or Pepperdine or Loyola or these other schools, that a sport is there to be a college athlete and to hopefully better yourself, but you're not earning anything. Whereas Caleb Williams is earning a ton of money for USC. He should benefit off that because that's who he is. That's what capitalism. So, I mean, that's a whole other conversation that we've talked about, but it could go even further. But the real crux of this all is that the NCAA was just didn't think they could be touched, and now they're seeing that, oh yeah, we can, and we're going to go down for it.
Matt, man, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, really well said, Ryan. I think it's a very reactive sort of response by the NCAA for all the reasons that Ryan laid out. When you say something is sort of carte blanche in terms of NIL, in terms of transfer portal, that basically means that you didn't put in really any thought into your policy. You're just kind of reacting to what needs to be done, when in reality, some form of regulation, and what that right form of regulation is why you sort of exist in the first place, why you are sort of a unique organization in that sense. So the fact that they've just kind of let it be open season now, this is kind of what's creating a very unique circumstance, because by regulating, you're creating some form of a mixed socialist capitalist model, right? Where it's like, look, it's going to be capitalist because folks are going to get paid, but they won't necessarily get paid proportion to how, quote unquote, important that sport is to the overall economic bottom line of an athletic department. So that's where kind of that socialist piece comes in. And you want that because, to Fred's point, you want everyone to feel like a student. You want the collegiality. You want to be able to preserve what really a university environment is, what a campus is, what those 4 years are really meant to represent. Now, it was always kind of, it was absent of any sort of capitalism. And now what has happened is it's pure capitalist. And because there is no regulation. And now this is when the Darwinism is going to now start taking place. It's survival of the fittest, and what does fit here mean? Survival of the most economically sort of powerful sports, the most popular sports, and what have you. So where the concern now is going to be is that the football players and the basketball players, but really the football players, are going to say, well, our sport is really worth 90-95% of the entire athletic department budget, so we should be getting 90 to 95% of the revenue share in a pure capitalistic sense. And basketball is going to say, well, we deserve 5 to 10%, women's basketball 1 to 2%, and then everybody else is sort of out in the dark. So what does this now do to the rest of the sports? Because now if you're a school that comes in and says, no, the right thing to do is to cap it, everyone's going to get paid X moving forward, but now that puts you at a competitive disadvantage of other programs in a sport that you really care about, i.e. USC and football. If USC comes out and says, okay, the right thing to do here is to preserve the other Olympic sports, make sure they're getting paid. To Fred's point, we've got great athletes all over the place. Let's make this somewhat fair. But now what does that do to USC football when you've got the Oregons of the world and the Texases of the world and the Georgias of the world and everyone who's spending like crazy? There's already a criticism. There's already a concern. There's already a fear that USC monetarily is falling behind. Now, do you fall even further behind by doing the right thing? So that's why you need the NCAA to have stepped up, been proactive, set a policy that made a lot of sense for a lot of people. Now you're putting it into the hands of the universities. Now you're putting it in the hands of the lawyers. And this is where the challenge becomes. I'm very concerned moving forward now for the schools that really want to go all in on football. Are they going to have to start eliminating Olympic sports? I mean, is USC going to have to face a reality here that, golf and water polo and volleyball and what have you? Hey, I mean, do we need to do this now moving forward, given how much emphasis and investment is required into football? So there's all of these sort of domino effects that are very concerning moving forward as a result of this. And Fred, the other thing I'll say is, I think we're going to be there. I think we're going to be there with students being employees of the university. Now, the one thing I'll say is, I think there's a world where that can coexist a little bit. Like, think of graduate students who are TAs. Think of graduate students who have research assistantships at labs and whatnot. They're also paid, but they're also students. But it's kind of this sort of hybrid model. So there's probably a hybrid model that makes sense for the student athlete. But again, in graduate school, because it's more of a job, right? Historically, your allegiance is always to your undergrad school, right? It's like, oh, well, grad school, I'm more mature. I was getting paid. I was closer to an employee. All my fun was at undergrad, so that's where my allegiance is. Does that now happen with these football players where, hey, I'm no longer like a USC student. I'm playing for USC the way I would play for G League, Ignite, or the way I would play for like NFL Europe, or the way I would play for, a professional team in another part of the world. So am I going to, again, have that same allegiance to my university? And as a result of that, if I don't, then every year is going to be free agency, and I'm always going to be looking for the best possible opportunity. So I don't think Jack is coming back in the box. I think Jack is getting further and further removed from the box, and it's just going to be really, these are the wild times that we're in.
So with that being said, we have to figure out what does this mean for USC, right? And I think this is where collectives come into play, right? And I could be wrong, but let's just say, well, the highest grossing conference last year was the Big Ten. They made the most in revenue, which helps us out. You give all the students a fair shake at a revenue share, right? So every sport, if you're on scholarship, you get revenue share. But if you are a part of the collective, that's where you start to earn your extra money. That way, and this is just my proposal, and there's probably a bunch of holes in it. Thought about it in 2 days. I didn't put it together, but if you give everybody the revenue share, right? But then you keep your collectives, and your collectives still pay the top players and the players who wants the checks. That way, that's how you're able to keep the NILs involved. That's how you're able to keep the business aspect out of it as far as it being a job. Because here's the issue with it being a job. Now I'm paying you under a contract, right? And you have to perform. So if you don't perform, am I able to fire you? You know what I mean? Like, those are the questions you have to ask now that you're an employee. You're able to get fired. You're not good enough. I get to fire you. But if you keep it under this model, every scholarship athlete gets some of the revenue share, but the collective still is playing the football players and the basketball players. If your collective is strong, you should be able to compete still. That's my idea of it. But for USC, they need to hurry up with their collective. Like, we don't know what I'm still under this theory. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know how they're doing it, but they need to be a little bit more public, because people need to know, as far as recruiting, what does their collective do? Because the theory right now is they're still trying to figure it out. Nope. You need to start talking. You need to start saying something. You need to start doing it. And you need to start letting these kids know, hey, our collective compete with everybody else. How much do you need? Because this thing is about to springboard way faster than it was projected. I think they thought this NIL thing was supposed to take off 5 to 10 years from now. It only took 4. You know what I mean? Like, and so SC needs to figure it out, and they need to publicize what they're doing, and they need to get this NIL thing rolling and shaking quick. Because after, allegedly, this settlement is supposed to happen on Friday. Allegedly. I don't know if it is or not. That's what I've been hearing. But if it does, it's the spaceship is taking off. SpaceX has finally hit the moon, and it's about to go to the next galaxy. So you have to get ready to go. Ryan, what do you think? Where does this put USC? How do you feel about it?
Well, and the other little wrinkle, which, I have kind of my ideas, but it's like how.
Well, what are your ideas? Tell your idea. Go ahead. We have time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you define revenue, right? Is it just money, TV money, and ticket sales? Like, are NIL funds considered just donations, or do you pull that into revenue? Like, if a booster comes in and says, hey, I want my 10 million only going to the football program, is that allowed? Or is that, no, this is a pool for rev share for all of our players? So that's where it gets real murky, and like, especially when
it's always been like that though, Ryan. It's always been like that though. If you write a check to football, it just goes to football. It's been like that for 1,000 years, so I think it will remain that way. That's my opinion. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, when it was going to just like facilities, but now that it's like pay for play, is pay for play revenue, or is pay for play just facility donation on the memo? But it's for a player.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Collective and NIL is separate, right? You're able to pay for play, but NIL is you're using your actual name, image, and likeness. So that gives me the ability to go be in commercials and get sponsorships. Correct?
They're like intertwined, I think. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Like the collectives and who knows? I mean, the collectives are all different too, right? Like what they do, but for the most part, they're the ones collecting the money and then distributing the money. So some of that money they collect is a pure pay for play hey, here's my money, give it to this. Some of it is like from whatever Mercedes, and like then they distribute it that way. So
Okay, I got you.
But
thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's just it's wild. I don't think NIL is going anywhere. Will it be regulated more? I mean, that's this, I guess, when this is finalized, what we'll know. But who regulates it? I don't know. I mean, it's such an interesting place where we are and how quickly. I mean, I just want to real quickly get back to it, and then Jamal, if you have anything else to add, I feel like we've kind of like circled the wagons around this a little bit. But getting back to Rashada real quick, Jaden Rashada, like, and I don't want to take anything away from the young kid, super talent, but the fact that Florida offered him almost $14 million tells me either two things: that they way overvalued what he was going to bring to the program, or two, they never intended to pay that much, but they just knew they had to throw a crazy number to get him to commit, because $13 million for a freshman that was, a good recruit, but not like the number one recruit in the nation. Like, that is insane to me. Like, it's got to just be they were throwing numbers out knowing they were never going to have paid the piper, but just get him to commit and then figure it out after.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, for sure. In the case of Rashada, Ryan, I think you're spot on. It's money I don't think Florida had yet. I think it was, hey, if you stay with us, this is what we're going to kind of give you over the next couple of years. And I don't think the money ever came through. We heard similar things with Texas A&M. We've heard similar things with some other programs. So, again, just as wild west as this has been on the receiving end, it's been equally wild on the giving end. I think the conversation that's really fascinating is that interplay between the collective and the athletic department, where if you treat the athletic department as the pure revenue sharing body and you allocate according to sport, and then the collective becomes what makes you competitive, say, as a football program, where it's almost, think of it as your base contract and then your signing bonus, right? Where it's like the base contract is what you're going to get with the athletic department, and then what you get on top of that, all of your incentives and your bonuses, just like in the real world, what you get in stock and all of those things are all what the collective is going to provide. Now, I think what's really fascinating there is the healthier your collective is, the more you're going to be able to get away doing a rev share with the athletic department. Because if you don't have a healthy collective, then every dollar of rev share is going to start really mattering to these football players. And so, are we going to get to a world where the divide gets even greater, where the rich football programs even further separate from everybody else, and college football becomes even more inequitable than it already is as a sport, where it's really kind of 15 to 20 teams have 80 to 85% of the talent? Does that now become 90-10, 95-5 as a result of this? And then B, what happens when everyone that is paying into this collective is saying, again, back to kind of that ROI conversation, what am I really getting for my money? And they decide, look, this may not be the best use of my investment. I want to kind of go do something else. Here's my radical idea. I mean, are we at a world now where we're going to have an NFL developmental league? I mean, does college football cease to exist in 5 years, where the combination of the collective not being able to kind of come through on their investments because that ROI isn't clear, along with the possibility that media goes down 3, 4, 5 years from now, because all these media rights deals are all on paper. None of that money has come home yet. We're expecting the hockey curve to keep going up because college football has been so popular. But what happens if now that we have a 14-team playoff, now you can lose 3 games and still get into the playoff? Now that the regular season becomes devalued, look at what's happening in the NBA. Look at what's happening in Major League Baseball. Look at what's happening in these sports where the regular season doesn't matter that much. Everything, media coverage, viewership, all goes down. So if now you have a combination where the collective structure, potentially the ROI doesn't close, and that doesn't keep replenishing, and a world where media rights and viewership stagnates or goes down, what do you really have now in college football? You don't really have anything. And so are you in a world where, we have kind of an XFL, UFL type of model here that now becomes the developmental league for the NFL? And does college football cease to exist 5, 7, 10 years from now? It's incomprehensible at this point. But frankly, the last 3 or 4 years have been so incomprehensible that I can't say there's a non-zero probability that doesn't happen.
I will say this, Jamal. I think college basketball makes all their money around tournament time. You know what I mean? Like, yep. They don't make any money during the season because it starts in the middle of football season, but like they become a big player around tournament time.
Right, because the regular season, you can lose 9 games and be the national champion. You can lose 11 games and be the national champion. What made college football so special was it was life and death. I mean, we had Matt Leinart here, last week. Remember what he talked about? It was like, look, man, that Fresno State game was so big. I mean, that was back in the day. You lose once, you're done. I mean, it was top 2 for the Natty. And then you still had sort of this element with the top 4. Is it really a big deal now to be a top 14 team? Not really. I mean, it's not that big a deal to be able to make the playoffs moving forward. So, if you have 3 losses in terms of margin for error and you can still win the Natty, are people going to be tuning in as religiously as they did week in and week out? I don't know. Maybe, but maybe not. And if it's a maybe not, what does that actually mean for the economics of college football?
So in conclusion, you hate the playoff system now.
No, I don't hate it. Let me be very clear. I don't hate it. But I think there was a world where you could have done it with like top 6. I think you could have kind of gone to top 6, give the top 2 a bye, and you still it's interesting. You can still kind of have an element of a Cinderella, but the regular season still really matters. At 14, I mean, we're going to be talking about it later in the summer. I mean, SC's got some tough games and all of that. They could lose all their tough games and, still make the playoff. It's not quite the same.
I think that's another example of a knee-jerk reaction. I want to ask you one more question. We're going to get out of here, and we'll get out of here real quick. So let's say NCAA comes out and they say we're capping payment, right? So, and I mentioned this in the past. So if you're a senior, you get 150. If you're a junior, you get 125. If you're a sophomore, you get 100. If you're a freshman, you get 75. That is all you get. If you get outside deals, if you're in commercials and all that stuff, that's fine. If that comes out and they do that, right? He said, like, all right, we need to get a handle on this. Let's do that. 175, 125, 100, 75. If you transfer, the next school picks up what you've already been paid. So let's say you've already been paid a chunk of money and then you transfer. All this school has to do is just pick up the rest. It doesn't have to start all over. What do you think that would do with this landscape of collectives and NILs? Jamal, you go ahead and go first, and we'll shoot it to Ryan.
Well, I mean, it's the pro model, right? Where it's like, hey, if you trade a player, you got to pick up their contract or what's kind of dead money against the cap from an NFL standpoint? What's the remaining guaranteed money, both from an NFL and NBA standpoint? I think it makes you sort of more mindful for sure in terms of the number of transactions. I think, to be honest with you, Coach, even capping the amount on a per player basis, again, opens the door to Ryan's other question of what is considered NIL then? What's other money? It's like, hey, I'm giving you straight cash because of who you are. It's because of your name, image, and likeness. I'm not asking for a commercial. Sure, okay, fine. I'll ask for some autographs. But like essentially I'm just kind of giving you money. So even by regulating the amount, if you don't do a hard line kind of regulation, what's going to happen is you're still going to have folks work their way around that system. And then if you go really hard line, it's just going to be the way it was, in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s in Texas and in the SEC, where you're just going to have everything under the table. So I don't know if you can sort of corral this thing anymore. But I think there's a way to sort of make this a little bit more equitable. I think the interesting thing is going to be, from a collective perspective, if it's hard enough to get these guys, at least from a USC perspective, like we've talked about, to get them to pay for football players. Now, if we start introducing a world where I got to pay now every year for a golfer, I got to go pay for a volleyball player, I got to go pay for a gymnast, that's just going to be even harder and harder. So I think that we're in a world where we're going to have to see what is the definition of ROI for a collective, in terms of the folks, the limited partners, the people that are giving the funding. I don't know if we've defined that yet. And I think until there's a compelling ROI, I don't know if this is going to be sustainable 3, 4, 5 years from now.
I think we need to. I think we need to get Chase involved in this, like Florida State's doing. JP Morgan Chase, get them involved. That's a really good idea, though. I looked into that too. They're ahead of the game. If they get that to work, everybody's going to Florida State. They're way ahead of the game. Ryan, go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is I'm just curious if that were to be the case, like would universities push back? Because up to this point, it's not like the universities had to pay anything, really. I mean, it's donors and collectives. So if all of a sudden they're like, oh, you gotta do this rev share and 150, 125, 100, is a university like, oh, we don't want to do that. Like that goes against what we want to do. Like, yeah, we love football because they give us money to do other things. We don't love football because we have to pay for it. So is that going to cause a whole nother lawsuit and litigation between universities and athletes? And now if the NCAA is no longer a governing body, universities are going to go rogue and they're going to do their own thing. So, I mean, to me right now, as it stands, without formulating a huge thought process and outlining like my ideas, like to me, NIL is really the only way forward in the formative years right now. I think there's a better way to I don't even know how you'd regulate it. There's a better way to go about it. But doing anything that is a pure rev share or pure universities paying is, to me, going to take years and years and years to fully adapt and get indoctrinated. And so, we're kind of just going to be looking at this NIL landscape, and we'll just see it ebbs and flows it every year. Cause I think that's the only way that these guys are going to get paid. Guys and gals are going to get paid for now, until all this stuff's out of court.
Good deal. Well, we put another one in the books. That was a great conversation, guys. I appreciate you. I feel like it was the gathering of the minds. As long as it doesn't turn into the Eyes of March, we were good, right? That's all that matters. So that's good right. Deal. Hey, I appreciate you guys. We put another one in the book. Fans, we appreciate you. Keep watching. Until next time, buddies, this has been the Bet Online to the Detroit podcast. You guys know how it goes. Live free, fight on.